little history on me in the game. My very first toon was a hunter, a different hunter than I'm playing now. I did a lot of research before I started him, and somehow ended up making him a, what's the name of that alliance race that's got questionable sexuality? What is it? No, I'm serious. I can't remember what.
The Night Elves.
Night Elf.
Night Elf Mohawk, remember? You forgot Mr. T.
Yeah, I just made a lot of enemies just now. Anyway.
You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast with Dex and Mac. I got mouths to feed, so let's get this thing started. Time is money, friend.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Azeroth. You're listening to the Goblin Goldcast, your guide to making gold in World of Warcraft. This is episode 44. I'm your host, Dex, coming to you from Napa, California. With me on Skype is a man whose entire drinking team has a bowling problem, my co-host, Mac, from Anchorage, Alaska. How you doing, Mac?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I've got a fishing team that has the same problem.
Yeah, what are you going to do? You know, some people go fishing to fish, other people...
Well, you know, if you're not going to catch a fish, at least you can catch a buzz, right?
That's been your motto for as long as I've known you.
As long as everyone has their own goals in life, you know. Got mine, score, beat. All right.
Yeah. What do they say about never aim too high? Or did they say that?
Only when you're trying to write your name in the snow.
Wow, this went a bad direction already. I'd say let's start over, but we've already had to do that once.
Yeah. Thanks, Skype.
The audio problems continue. So. I understand we were invited to raid with somebody.
Oh, yes. Fafford and the folks over at Lion's Pride Tavern, their podcast, great podcast.
Right.
They were wondering if we were listening. Yes, I do listen.
Yep.
Apparently they haven't listened to us and me talk about how badly I do on raids. But yeah, no, they they gave a challenge out and asked us to join them on a raid. They raid Fridays and Saturday nights, and there was a little glitch to that problem, and I realized that right away when the invitation went out, and that's that I know that they all play Alliance.
Right.
And I don't have any Alliance tunes that are of the appropriate rating level. So I sent Fafford an email and sent him a message on Twitter and letting him know it'd be a couple of weeks before I was able to get a tune up to the appropriate level.
Right. Well, them inviting us in the first place shows that they didn't really think it through. But, I mean, unless you're wanting to set up your entire raid guild to rage quit after they get a load of us for a little while. By us, I mean you.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah. I'll be on my best behavior, man.
my highest level Alliance tune is a level 100 mage that's decked out in heirloom leveling gear.
Oh, so you'll fit right in.
Yeah. I'm afraid that if I was along for the ride with this tune, that if we had a piece of trash that broke wind, I might be back on my way to my corpse after that. You know.
Well, just don't pull any fingers. You'll be fine. Yeah.
All these rules: don't stand in the fire, don't pull the mob's finger. I mean, I can't keep track of all of this. I can't be trusted with all this information. So. Oh
yeah. Anyways, I told him, you know, I could represent us, and until you could get a tune.
You could represent us. You thought I was going to let you slip that in, right?
Well, you know,
I see what you did there. I can poorly represent myself. I don't need help doing that. This is not necessary.
It sounds like you've had a bad experience.
I've had a few bad experiences with attempting to raid in other games, but so far my World of Warcraft record for raiding is a perfect record. I have never failed any raid that I've ever been in.
I've never been in one.
I've never been in a raid. I'm still batting 1,000 though, so a little worried about messing up that perfect record.
Yeah. Well, last time you and I raided together was many, many years ago, back in the game that will not be named.
Right. Right. And that game was notorious for having guilds that were run by very angry 12-year-olds. So there's, my oldest son he's 32, and just the idea of a 12-year-old screaming at me that I'm standing in the fire. I mean, granted, I will be standing in the fire and not knowing that I'm doing it, but having a 12-year-old point that out to me while he's playing with his fidget spinner just doesn't set right with me. I know this is true for a lot of games. You're going to have raid leaders that are going to be similar to that, young kids or people that act like young kids and kind of freak out at you. And I know that that's not the case with Lion's Pride Tavern. So not trying to say that, guys. Please don't misunderstand. There'll be plenty of real reason to be mad at me if I go on the raid that have to do with my poor performance. So,
they'll just be sitting back on their microphones, rolling their eyes back in their head, going, "Why in the world did we do this?"
Yeah, and some of them are going to be, "Oh, we're so glad that we're streaming this. This is awesome." We're gonna show this video later as what not to do.
Yeah, Mac's gonna become a new verb in the household.
Mac had a great idea. We're gonna cover some of the techniques and walk through some of the things that you do in the raid. And now he's showing a few examples of what not to do. This is an awesome series we've got going here. Trendsetters we are.
Yeah, I have been an example before. I will be an example again, I'm sure.
You're always an example. Just unfortunately, it's usually a bad example.
Bad example, yeah. I've been told that. Don't act that way in front of the grandkids.
Yeah. You've been told that recently.
I can't ever bring you anywhere. The grandkids are looking around. Oh, she's talking about him. Okay.
It's funny. I actually would love to see what a raid in World of Warcraft looks like, because, as mentioned before, I have not been in a raid when it was current content. I've gone back and
right.
Kind of sloshed through and made some gold.
Fallen in lots of holes in Firelands.
I've managed to do that even out of era. I've managed to do that, and that stupid little spider in Firelands killed me a bunch of times before I figured out what I was doing wrong on that. But, I could have read a walkthrough on it, but no, you know me better than that.
Walkthrough? What is this walkthrough thing?
What's a walkthrough? But no, I actually I look forward to going through and seeing what one of those is about. So maybe I'll have to find time on a Friday early evening for me to where I can get in and do something. The kids are usually pretty rowdy still around that time, but maybe I can work it out. I might have enough duct tape to make that happen.
If not, I've got a special tonic you can give them.
Yeah.
it goes great in the milkshake and works great for my grandkids.
Oh,
yeah, I mean, not that I would ever do anything like that, but
it's like when my daughter was born and she had a little bit of colic, and my father-in-law, who was born in Sicily and sometimes it's a little hard to understand him, he has a very thick accent. And I understand him great now, which I think it's that I've adapted somehow to him, because he still has the thick accent. But he was telling us the way to make her sleep, and he said, just put a little Bailey's in her gum before she goes to bed. I'm thinking he's talking about Bailey's Irish Cream. It's like, nah, Dad, we can't do that. That's, CPS will be at our door. I mean, great idea. Appreciate the thought. But I think we better stick to the NyQuil like we've been doing, so far. And he looks at me like, he's looking at me like I'm out of my mind. And then he sounded it out for me. A bay leaf.
Yeah. Well, that would be
leaf.
Different.
And I was totally kidding about the NyQuil, Dad. We would never do that. But how did we get on that? I have no idea how we got on that.
Never know where these two guys are going to go.
Oh, man. Yeah, we are having serious audio problems. So if I have no idea how this show is going to sound when I get to the editing room, which is the same room I'm recording in. But when we go through and I have to chop this thing up and make it work, I hope it doesn't sound really bad and choppy, but we have already had a couple of start and stops through this whole thing, and so you will forgive us if the quality isn't there and if it doesn't sound like it's meshed up just perfect. And we're going to do the best we can, though. We're gonna.
It's Mac's fault. It usually is.
We're gonna. I didn't even have to say that. People know that automatically. I mean, this is show number 44. If they've been paying attention, they totally know this. So.
Yes, Mac's computer and the long distance company here in Alaska, my cable, I don't know.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, my computer just goes wonky.
Yeah, I think the guys at the Lion's Pride Tavern are saying, okay, step one, we're going to turn off their mics because we don't want to hear these guys on the live stream. That's for sure. Yeah.
Mute them.
Dex is jumping up and down. Anybody know what he's talking about? Well, he hasn't said anything. Well, I've got him muted. Oh, he's in the fire, and he can't figure out how to get out of it. Well,
there we go.
We'll just res him when it's all over with. It's faster than healing him anyway.
Yeah. He's less of a problem when he's taking a dirt nap. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? I take it back when I said I've never been on a raid in World of Warcraft. There was that one time. I did go on one raid. I did not really participate. I was just kind of hanging out. But it was at the end of, God, what was it? At the end of, it was in Era. It was the end of Mists of Pandaria. And I bought my way into a kill to get a moose mount.
Oh, there you go.
That was Pandaria, right?
Was that? No, that was last expansion, Draenor.
Was it? Was that Draenor?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I got it confused. Yeah, but all I had to do was basically go in there and sit there and don't do anything. And
stand there, don't do anything.
Don't move. That. Stay over here. You'll be safe. Don't move. I got hit by an AOE, I think, and died like in one shot. And they're like, "Don't release." Okay. But anyway.
I did some stuff, not a raid, but I did a dungeon, a mythic with some guys from Death by Chocolate the other day.
Yeah.
And apparently one of the new trinkets I've got, which brings my item level up, supposedly it throws off something that helps it's supposed to help your teammates, but it was throwing these things out there and tagging mobs. And what are you firing at those guys? It's like, I'm not firing anything. A stupid trinket. I got to figure out what trinket it is. It's great when I'm doing solo, but when I'm in a dungeon and we're trying to pass something up and I'm pulling, like, I have these sparks flying off me that are pulling extra mobs. It's real annoying for the rest of the group.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It was a new trinket. I just put it on. I was like, oh, it's an upgrade. I'll put it in there. And
you didn't look to see what it does?
Well, it says it gives a buff to the group, but instead of just buffing the group, it throws off this little spark that in random directions that pulls mobs. And
oh man, see, now you know better than this from our days playing EverQuest. You know, like if you were playing a ranger and you were trying to keep a mob rooted, and you didn't want a bow that had a proc on it that would do direct damage because it would break root. I mean, you know about these things where you have to pay attention to what you've got.
It's not supposed to be a damaging proc, which was the irritating thing about it. It was supposed to help out. It was supposed to be helpful. Yeah, they thought I was real helpful.
Well, I do know.
Let's just say we didn't complete the dungeon within the time limit.
I do know one thing. If we manage to get tunes up to 110 on Alliance, and I really don't think that they want me playing a mage. I mean, it's I don't play a mage well. The only thing I do with a mage is I go into dungeons that I'm overpowered for and clear everything out with AoE and then loot. So that's what I use it for. But anyway, if we make this thing happen, there's one thing that I'm absolutely sure of. No matter how many people are on the raid, afterwards it's going to be, well, how in the world did Dex make 50K on this raid and he died 17 times? I will find a way to make gold. I'll be sitting there, dead, the entire time, but I'll end up making some gold. I will find a way. It's like you with legendaries. I will find a way to trip and fall into a bucket of gold. So.
There we go. Well, so guys, we'll try to make it happen. We're doing some leveling. I've actually I've got my the knowledge tome. I was able to send that over to my. I made a demon hunter. He's level 107 as of tonight, and so I sent him that compendium of knowledge that'll allow me to get my artifact power up really quickly. So I should be 110 here in a couple days.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be raid worthy by next Friday.
I don't think you really have to worry about how raid friendly, how raid worthy you are, and I don't think either one of us really have to worry about gear or skill for this. As long as we're 110, I think we'll be good for their purposes, because I get the feeling that it's like the Globetrotters trying to get the Washington Senators to come along, and no, all you have to do is know how to dribble the basketball, and we'll take care of the rest. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be something like that.
I'll sit in the corner and drool.
I resisted that one. It was too easy. Sometimes when they come right over the plate, I just feel guilty if I hit them. But anyway, so we did have one of our regular listeners send in a letter that kind of gave us the idea for tonight's topic. Why don't you go over that a little bit?
All right. Well, I'll try to read the email. He actually sent it out to about 3 different podcasts. And so, anyways, just getting some ideas. He's trying to get a few of us to answer his question. But this is from YepX. Hello, guys. I've been trying to make gold in WoW with my favorite profession in terms of convenience, unless you're a mage, engineering. However, as years go by, engineering seems to be a passive gold-making profession, but is a massive failure of a profession if you're trying to earn gold with it via crafting. And yes, I have TSM, made groups for it, and have various add-ons and guides to make gold. However, I can't find a guide to make gold with engineering, at least consistently, without a ton of work. That's true.
All right.
Personally, if Blizzard removed only usable by engineer restrictions on legacy and older items from the past, I could see it being a bit easier to make gold, but still wouldn't be able to hold a candle to other professions. And yes, I'm well aware of crafting mounts can be a big money maker, but the requirement to log in every day to use your daily craftable cooldown, the Sky Golem mount, for example, and he says energy source, but it's Jard's energy. Yep.
Right.
Asks a lot for players who are unable to do so. Now, I'm not saying to remove those cooldowns as they are now, but I feel to be reasonable to consider removing them 3 and 4 expansions after they were new. Cooldowns aside, compared engineering to tailoring, leatherworking, and even blacksmith to some degree, whom only need 2 or 3 required materials in most cases, is that an engineer has very little I can craft without needing ridiculous materials to do so. In my opinion, engineering seems broken in terms of gold making, which means it was probably developed by a gnome. Jokes aside, which probably went over players whom play gnomes' heads. Aside from maybe revamping all professions to use various engineering parts, legacy and current in some fashion, how do you see Blizzard changing engineering to make it more competitive with other professions? And YepX.
All I have to say to that is, show me on the Meccano doll where the bad man touched you. Yeah. So, I'm just kidding, man. I know you're a regular listener. I'm just playing. But, you actually bring up some things that have been a long time complaint for a lot of people that have right. Engineering. Little history on me in the game. My very first toon was a hunter, a different hunter than I'm playing now. I did a lot of research before I started him, and somehow ended up making him a, what's the name of that alliance race that's got questionable sexuality? What is it? No, I'm serious. I can't remember what.
The Night Elves.
Night Elf. Night
Elf Mohawk, remember? You forgot Mr. T.
Yeah, I just made a lot of enemies just now. Anyway.
You can edit that out.
I'll edit all that later. So when I did my research, I looked into professions, and this is before I even created the toon. I did a ton of research on what I wanted to do. I was coming from another game that I did a lot of research on, and so it was kind of my thing. And it's like, all right, well, in this game, you can only have 2 professions. You could have all of them in the previous game, so I'm going to need to nail this down and make sure I choose the right ones. Because I never want to change them once I choose them in the first place.
And you chose poorly.
that was a joke. So I found a write-up where somebody had given the advice that as a hunter, the only choices as professions, unless you're a complete moron, is to go with leatherworking and skinning. Well, in retrospect, the advice that I should have taken is that only a moron would make choices on their professions based on what one guy says. Yeah, I made a bad choice. The theory.
So that's why in this podcast we have 2 guys that can.
The theory was that you'd be making all this armor for yourself, and that was the idea of having those 2 professions. And I should have looked around for somebody that said, no, that's not how you make gold, because ultimately that's where I was going to end up focusing, of course. So right. It didn't last very long that I had those 2 professions. I very quickly figured out that this engineering thing was for me, and I wanted engineering. I liked the idea of being able to make my own guns. I liked the idea of being able to pour it all over the place. Engineering was not something that I looked at as a way to make gold. But it sure was going to make my play experience a lot more fun. Where
does he get all these neat toys?
As a hunter, right? I mean, not to mention the goggles, which you get kind of a head start usually with expansions. You for a little while have almost like best in slot sometimes, or at least for a little while it
right.
stays at the top. So there are some advantages play wise in that, and so I went that way, and I dropped skinning. And then I figured out, well, I think I want mining with my engineering. So I went to mining. That tune today has engineering and alchemy, and it's had those 2 for a while. So I eventually dropped mining as well. So I skipped around a lot. But when it comes to professions, my first love is definitely engineering, and it has nothing to do with gold making. I know that's blasphemy on this show, but it's very true. And, I have to say, I did find plenty of ways to make lots of gold with engineering. But I completely feel for you in the arguments that you've made, and others have made them before, about, once you're on, 1 or 2 expansions past certain content, why make those things engineering only? Well, there's a very good reason for that. There are a lot of engineers out there that take the complete opposite opinion that you have on that. Their idea is, no, that's for engineers. No one else should be able to use this. These are people that were upset about looterangs being usable by everybody. Somebody has to ruin it for everybody else always. But, and by the way, these people that feel this way, that, these things should always be kept for engineers only, they're all gnomes. They are. Yeah. These are not goblin engineers. There's no way. So I agree with you on that. I also agree that cooldown should be relaxed over time. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But yeah, I definitely feel for you on that. And there aren't a lot of great options for making gold as an engineer if you're not able to take advantage of logging in every day and doing those daily cooldowns, because those are kind of integral to making gold for that profession, in my opinion.
But having that daily cooldown does keep the price up there higher, because it makes the items rare.
Right. I am actually in favor of keeping the daily cooldowns in place. I have an idea about how that can be tweaked, and again, we'll talk about that a little later. But that kind of brings us into our topic this week, and we want to do this will be like a part 1 or probably a 3-part series. They might not be all in a row. If we have interviews, we'll stick those in between the shows that we do this on. But what we wanted to do in 3 parts is go over professions and making gold with professions in a little bit of detail. Talk about our preferred ways of making gold with each particular profession. So this week we're going to go over the first 5. In general, I also wanted to mention that when you're choosing your professions, and we were going to talk about this a little before we get into specifics, you want to do a little bit of planning on this. Before you decide which two professions to stick on your main that you've leveled all the way up and that you're spending most of your time on, make sure that you're not sticking a profession on them that can be relegated to an alt. If it's a support profession that you just need to create some materials that you can then transfer over, then you may want to send that to an alt. Of course, the current expansion hasn't been very friendly in that regard, as Mac has pointed out. There are times that you have to have that support profession on your, where you almost have to have a gathering profession connected with your crafting in this expansion. I know that that's a pet peeve that you have.
Well, I will say that it is nice once you get flying on one toon, it is account bound, so that is making it a lot easier to level up the new toon. So
yeah,
I am liking that.
Yeah, but the first one we can talk about a little bit is engineering, and since the person that wrote in was talking about that, your ways to make gold with engineering are slim compared to a lot of the other professions. However, the payout that you get for those things that you're able to make can be rather high. He mentioned mounts. We've got a few crafted mounts here. We've talked about them on the show. Mac, you've made some of them recently and made some gold off of those. I've made gold off of a lot of them in the past and a little bit more recently as well. But you're kind of dependent on those cooldowns, at least for the Sky Golem, which currently right now is probably about your most dependable moneymaker as an engineer. Would you agree?
Right. Yeah, that one. Like I said, the Mechano Hog is one I do because you can make it a lot quicker. There's a lot of farming though, so it's not something I would go out and try to do make a lot of gold on, just because there are other things that you can make more gold doing.
Yeah.
In the same amount of time it takes you to farm up the materials for one.
Yeah, some of the mounts have a built-in vendor mats cost that makes them a little more risky.
Yeah, the spinner, the Kyperium, the Kyperium rocket.
Right.
That one right there. That one's about 60 or 80K worth.
Yeah, when you have to buy, like I said, when you have to go get those vendor mats, that's going to be a built-in cost that you're not going to be able to defer in any way. And especially when you run into, if somebody's duping or something like that, you can get hurt really bad on something like that. So I don't really see those as an obvious moneymaker, but the Mechano Hog is good, and that's out of era, which you know how I feel about making gold with things out of era. If it's a way to make gold and it's in this expansion, it's not going to be my first choice, and that's always going to be true for me. And the reason why, I would rather not be bumping heads with everybody else that's trying to make and sell this item. I would rather be the only fish in the slightly smaller pond and make a lot more gold, because I'm able to completely corner a market. We've talked about that a bit. So the other things that you can make, and some of these things are better early on in the life of the expansion, or certainly in an update to the expansion. A patch can bring some new life to a profession that's suffering a little bit. But early on, guns for hunters can be a good thing, because while all engineers may be hunters, not all hunters are engineers, right?
Right.
I mean, it tends to work out that not always. Okay. But yeah, guns and scopes for guns and things like that. Toys are another thing, but the problem with toys, a lot of the toys are engineering only. Don't count on making a lot of gold selling to other engineers, because they can make them too.
Right.
But the toys that are usable by all, those actually have a nice built-in value, something that that especially early on before they have a chance to nerf it and make it so that it doesn't work in other expansions other than the one that was introduced into. I'm not still mad about that at all. And then you've got Battle Pets, and Battle Pets is one that's for a lot of different professions have various crafted Battle Pets that can have some good value. But all in all, I really don't, besides mounts, I really don't see engineering as having a wide variety of gold making opportunity.
No, it's something that'll make you consistent gold, but it's a slow burn gold maker. It's not something you're going to be, if you want to be able to make something, you're going to be able to make hard, fast gold every week. Probably not your go-to profession.
Yeah.
So now the cooldown that you're talking about, I know in the past Blizzard had talked about making a change, but they've never.
Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that when we were talking about alchemy, but we can cover that now. At one point, they were talking about changing the way the cooldowns work, and this is something that would have made the situation better for our listener that wrote in, because they were going to have it set up so that you could log in every 3 days. And then you would have basically 3 charges of that daily cooldown, which makes it nice. You don't have to stress about missing a day here or there. It's a lot more casual friendly, and it does not drastically increase the number of items that are available in the marketplace. You still have that same built-in limitation. For instance, on the Sky Golem, if it were that you were able to make the jards, 3 of them every 3 days,
right? That's
no different than 1 every day.
So if what you're saying is if it was date night with Mrs. Mac, I wouldn't have to sit there the whole date night worrying about being able to get home and do that cooldown.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing worse than being on a weekend vacation. I think a lot of us that are addicted to these games have been there, where you're on a weekend trip and you're thinking, oh man, I'm missing my daily cooldowns. I have lost so much gold this weekend. I'm having a good time, honey. No, really glad that we came with your mother here.
Yeah.
But she doesn't listen. But anyway, but moving on before we spend way too much time on engineering. Second one I have on the list for us to cover is mining. And mining's pretty easy to figure out. With mining, a couple of things you want to be able to you want to have flying everywhere that you're mining. If you're in the current content and you're trying to make gold with mining, you can do it without the Legion flying. But I mean, I think I would go somewhere else otherwise, because Ghost Iron is kind of a go-to example that I try to give. There are never enough people selling Ghost Iron in the auction house, in my experience. It goes for way too much gold.
Right.
It's way over inflated. I mean, when you go out to some of the zones in Mississippi area, and you start farming up Ghost Iron, and you realize, oh my God, this is everywhere. I mean, it makes you realize just how scarce ore is in Legion compared to some of these older expansions.
Right.
It's, my God, you can't go a couple of feet without finding a node for Ghost Iron. And you've actually got, and I'm not remembering the name of the device right now, you've actually got an engineering device that lets you see additional nodes.
Those goggles, right?
Yeah. And it's usable that's another thing that's usable by anybody, not just miners. I mean, not just, not just engineers.
Engineers.
Yeah. So yeah, I recommend mining old content. It's, you can go through and you can farm in an area. If you want to spend an hour and a half just farming on a path, if that's your thing, you know that when you put it up in the auction house, there's probably not going to be any more of that ore available. or very little of it, and you can kind of within reason set your price. And I'm not a big fan of making gold by farming. Farming is not my first choice for something like that, but it is a very dependable way to do it. And if you're first starting out on a new character, it's a way to jump right in there and early on be able to use a profession to make some gold. So that's kind of mining in a nutshell for me. Did you have anything further on that?
Nope. Loop. Mine. That's and the competition, older stuff. I mean, even the newer stuff. The problem with the newer stuff in Legion is you're just fighting that person in the auction house that's going to be trying to undercut you by a copper here, a copper there.
Right. And that's when we're talking about any gold making methods. And I have actually caught some criticism for this, both privately and openly at times, where I really push the making gold with older content. There are some people that believe that I'm completely nuts with that, look at all the opportunities with Legion. Well, when Legion first came out, I was making a lot of gold with Legion because it was the initial push, the initial rush. And then things settle down a little bit, and that changes. And the people that make a lot of gold are people that can recognize which way the wind's blowing and when it shifts. And there was definitely a shift in the wind on that. And I think the wind was coming from the dump about that time, and I could smell the shift. I can smell the shift from here. But,
there we go.
All right. So, and herbalism is the next one, and those two kind of go hand in hand. Most of what you can say about mining holds true for herbalism, with a few differences. Herbalism, I feel, is still, even if you don't have flying, I think herbalism is still very profitable in Legion. Right. And it's only because you have you got some flowers that still go for some big bucks that you can take advantage of. Now, flying is certainly better, and if you don't have flying, you want to have a sky golem, that's for sure. Right. I know where you can buy one. So.
I know you can buy several. Yeah.
But yeah, being able to pick them without dismounting is nice, and if you can fly, that's an even bigger bonus. But yeah, still old content for that as well, though. I mean, you've got opportunities for that. But if you've got flying in Legion, I'd hop on the Sky Golem and just farm away, and you can make still a lot of gold, because the majority of players still don't have flying. You're still in the minority if you have it, so take advantage of that time while you can, I say. The next one I have on here is alchemy.
I do have a beef with alchemy, and this is where I will say with YepX. And again, I don't mind the daily cooldowns on certain things, but the with alchemy they've got with transmutation, they've got a couple things that are cross. Like your living steel is on the same cooldown as the transmute for elemental air, earth, fire, and life. Those sort of things.
Right.
And I trying to decide between the two sometimes. That's a little frustrating. And I'll always opt for the living steel versus the other. But I wish they didn't share the same cooldowns.
You know what? I don't have the same problem in that I don't have a problem deciding, because it's pretty obvious which one is the more profitable of the two. But it does make me sad that I have to look at a transmute that I could easily have the materials to do and make gold off of, but because of another one that I'm going to do, it's never going to happen.
Right. So
yeah, same problem, just a little different take on it. But yeah, I think that a lot, and they have fixed that in the past where okay, it doesn't have it doesn't share a cooldown anymore, or it doesn't have a cooldown at all anymore. I'm actually not in favor of removing the daily cooldown.
Oh no,
I say quit linking them.
Right, yeah. The daily cooldown it will keep prices up there. If you get rid of that cooldown, all you're going to see is the prices just
Right.
Because the supply is going to increase, and as the supply increases, your demand will start dropping down. So.
Well, I know for a fact that all of the head people over at Blizzard listen to us every week and take everything that we say to heart, and really are anxious to implement all these changes that we suggest. So in case they were taking notes, unlink the cooldowns, the daily cooldowns, and extend them to three transmutes every 3 days or something like that.
Right.
Or even 5 every 5 days would be fine.
Right. Yeah, log in once every 5 days, get your 5, but you can't do more than 5 in a 5-day period. That makes sense.
It makes total sense. Therefore, it will never happen.
and alchemy, I mean, even the new content, alchemy is still a really good gold maker. A lot of the potions and flasks are still making good gold.
And again, I mean, we've said this before, but we'll say it again. When it comes to making potions, whether you're a raider or not, you need to be aware of when to put these on the market. You've got certain days that these things sell better based on what days people are raiding, and with a lot of things, the day or the time of day that you post something in the auction house will make a big difference in how well it sells or how much you can get for it. And but alchemy is actually one of my favorites, if not my all-time favorite gold making profession. And the transmutes have made me a ton of gold over time.
Oh, sure.
And I would love to see it fixed. It's funny because when I first made my very first tune, I looked at alchemy and went, yeah, that's something I'll never have. Yeah, I'm going to want to make potions. And it's funny because now that's I have more alchemists than anything else.
I've got multiple alchemists. I've got multiple tailors. We're not talking about tailoring on this podcast,
right?
Right. But I do. Those are a couple of professions that I really like.
Yeah, tailoring will be in part 2. But the last one that we have on our list here is inscription. And I'm going to let you take the lead on inscription because you've done a lot more of that than me.
Well, inscription, I mean, it's still decent gold. The Tome of the Tranquil Mind still, again, it's not making you as much gold as it was at the beginning of the expansion, but just having that available to be able to change specs in mid-dungeon, if something happens, your tank rage quits because you're standing in the fire too much.
Because you invited some guys from another podcast, and anyway.
Yeah. So being able to change your spec in mid dungeon, that's nice, and I do sell quite a bit of those. If you're just going to take your herbs and mill them, the sallow pigment, you've got your rosette pigment, and you got your sallow pigment. The sallow pigment sells really well in the auction house.
Right.
If you're not going to use it for making your own items. The glyphs. Now that the glyphs are more of a vanity type thing, even those are selling well. You're selling them to people that kind of like transmog. They want to have a certain look. Those are selling decently.
Well, remember the best selling type of item in the entire game is a vanity item, the mounts. So yeah. That. Oh
yeah, Constract sent me a tell. He finally bought his spider mount. So.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That vanity item just brought that up to my mind.
Now he was really in a hurry then, so he bought it knowing that in 7.2.5 that they're making a change to it.
I wasn't aware.
He didn't want to wait until after a lot of people complained that it was $2 million, and so they're actually taking the price down to $500,000 with the 7.2.5. See, you had to laugh and mess it up. See, I was actually going to hold for about 5 seconds and let him listen to this and let him freak out. But all right, well, contract. I can't even say his name today. Mac messed it up for you.
Sorry, man.
We're going to give you a little heart attack, but. Yeah. we were talking about inscription. One way that I actually did make a lot of gold were with the mysterious tarot cards back in the day. Right. These little gambling cards that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with, and you could get some that were 5,000 gold or 3,000 gold or 1,000 gold, whatever. Those were the high-end ones. And there was another one after that. There's a newer version of them that goes even higher that I haven't messed with. But yeah, I used to make those and sell them. They're really cheap to make. And I sold them by the tons. I was like the only game in town. I was in on it really early on, which I try to get in on things early on or just leave them alone because I hate trying to play catch up. But I made my.
I don't have flying and drainer yet.
I made my gold on it. I did well, and it was time to call it a day. But unfortunately, I was being stubborn, and I kept making them. And the last couple of thousand that I was selling, I just wasn't getting very much for them, and it just wasn't worth it. And I was down to like the last 500 or 600 that I had, and I wasn't going to make any more. And I didn't really feel like selling them as cheaply as they're going for. And so I decided to flip them all. I decided to go ahead and cash them in and see what I could get on these things. And out of 500 and something cards or 600 cards, whatever, I actually got a 5,000 and I got a couple 1,000 value cards out of them, which ended up being a lot more than I would have gotten for them if I had sold them. So it actually worked out. It was kind of funny. I made more gold that way, and for about half a second I was tempted to make more, but I overcame the temptation somehow. It's like it's a gambling thing, and
you realize your RNG is not normally that good. Huh?
Well, you know what they say. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. What matters is whether I win or lose. So that's when you're gambling. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I'm about out of ideas right now for this topic this week. I want to thank the guys from Lion's Pride Tavern for offering to have us come along on their raid this week. We'll level up and try to be back and ready to help you guys out, or
yeah,
I don't know if it
would be a lot of help.
Sure. I'm not sure if it's called help or hindrance.
We're going to go with help, but
yeah, but we'll try to be there here in a couple weeks, and you guys can laugh and and point fingers.
Well, I think that's going to about wrap up this week's show. I'd like to thank Schaefer Bates for his awesome work as the Goblin voice at the beginning of each show. Also, Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com for our theme music, Hot Rock, licensed under Creative Commons.
And if you'd like to get a hold of us, you can contact us at Mac, that's M-A-C, at GoblinGoldcast.com, or Dex, that's D-E-X, at GoblinGoldcast.com. If you can't reach us at our main email, we have an alternate email, MacGoblinGoldcast at gmail.com. You can contact us on Twitter at Goblin Goldcast, or you can visit us on Facebook.
And don't forget to visit the swag store at cafepress.com/Goblin Goldcast, and you can leave us a voicemail on our website, GoblinGoldcast.com. And please subscribe to us on iTunes or Stitcher if you listen to us there.
And we'll see you next week.
Now go make some gold.
This is how people do it now, Nikki. They have their interviews on the internet.
I like it. I know, child.
Okay, here they are. And when I hit this, they'll be able to see us. So come on and get in here close so we can be seen in the webcam. See how small the webcam is? No, get cheek to cheek. Nick, come here, cheek to cheek.
Don't crowd me.
We can see you guys.
Okay, great.
You got us?
Hi, my name is Billy.
Oh, we can hear you fine as well.
Oh, great.
Good.
Billy McMahon.
Nick Campbell.
I'm Benjamin.
Allison, we're going to ask you a few questions that some of our candidates find a little bit odd.
Let's go.
No
weird.
judgment. Shoot.
You're shrunken down to the size of nickels and dropped to the bottom of a blender. What do?
You take her flat on your back like this.
You just lay back, enjoy that breeze.
Light as a feather,
pretend it's a fan.
And let those back legs whip all around you like this. It's like getting an MRI.
Once this blender's on, it's on forever.
It's on.
Respectfully, I got to disagree. We sold blenders, and even the best model in the world is only going to run maybe 10 or 11 hours. So we're getting out, and when we do, we're better off for it, because whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
It's not so much getting out of the blender, it's what happens next. That's the question.
You've got 2 nickel-sized men free in the world. Think of the possibilities.
I mean, on top of my head, and I'm just spitballing here.
Swimming.
Sunglass repair? We'd be hell on those little screws.
Or maybe stick us in those submarines that they put in people's bodies to fight diseases.
Okay, that's not a real thing, the submarines.
No.
Wait a minute. I thought we were stuck in a blender. Now we're saving lives? What?
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 Let me just recap this for you real quick. We started off in a blender.
Yeah.
Now we're saving lives. What?
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 Wait a minute. We were stuck in a blender.
What a journey.
And now we're saving lives? What?
You guys led us to this. Thank you.